Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I am Julie Barrett. I'm the founder of Conservative Ladies of America, and we have a very special and hopefully very resourceful, useful presentation for you this evening. We have brought together some of the biggest names in the homeschool movement from across the country. We are telling parents to pull their kids out of public education and homeschool. We believe that homeschool is the best option to give your children the best education right now. And we don't want to just tell you to homeschool without giving you some resources. So tonight, we are bringing together some really great resources for you that are going to really be talking to parents who have kids in public school currently that want to remove their kids from the public school system. So you're going to have everybody from, curriculum resources to how are you going to structure your day? How can you make this work? And you're even going to get the legal side of this from Kevin Bordin at HSLDA. So we've got some really great resources for you tonight. We will not be giving live questions to our panelists tonight, but you can put your questions in the chat. We've got a couple of our team members, Mary Long and Jeannie Magdua, are both in the chat, and they will be answering your questions this evening. So if you do want some follow-up, please do chat with them about that, and we will direct your questions to the right people and make sure that you get some follow-up. And without further ado, I am very excited to introduce you to our first presenters of the evening. Jonathan and Adriana Prescott are the authors of Kids Don't Need School. If you are subscribers to our YouTube channel or follow us on social media, maybe you watched my interview with the Prescotts a few weeks ago. They're also the founders of Homeschool Life, and they are in the Washington State, Eastern Washington State. But what the Prescotts are going to talk to you about tonight is you've got kids in public school and you're not sure how you could make the transition. It sounds like homeschool would be really difficult to do. And so they're going to talk to you about different ways that you can make it work and being flexible with it and kind of overcoming the challenges. Welcome tonight, you guys. I'm so glad that you could come back and join us again for this event tonight.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let you take it away and share all of your pearls of wisdom with our viewers tonight.
Fantastic. I'm Jonathan Prescott, and this is Adriana Prescott. We are Homeschool Life. We promote homeschooling and do coaching for new homeschoolers. We've written a book, Kids Don't Need School, a radical homeschool plan to teach anything, promote independent learning, and prepare children for an uncertain future. We are on X, and our website is homeschoollife.us. Homeschooling is now mainstream. By 2030, homeschooling will be over 31% of all K through 12 population. Homeschooling is also an emerging market, and by 2029, it'll be a $10 billion industry. The resources available to homeschoolers is now more than any other time in the history of mankind. If you're interested in homeschooling, some of the first steps is to take is to check your legal requirements of your home state, understand what is required. Another step is to ask your children, bring them on board with what your family plan is. Next, I would say that the next step is to go ahead and pull your kids out of school, and then take a break, 6 to 8 weeks off, to reconnect with your children. And then with that time, you have to develop your family's child homeschooling goals and explore homeschooling styles. Don't worry about taking this time off, because homeschooling is far more efficient than the public school system. And you can cover most of the learning goals in a short amount of time. Remember, public school system is trying to teach 30 plus students at once, and the pace is oftentimes gauged at the slowest section of the class. So during this time, get to know your kids again, play games, go on outings such as picnics, do sports, camping, etc. Build your relationship with your children. This will be a crucial step in your homeschooling journey as you will reestablish bonding and attachment. If your children have gone to public school for any length of time, they will need to re-socialize and reconnect with the family environment. Remember, the socialization environment in the public school is an artificial environment, whereas the home is the true environment for socialization.
Something that's going to help you is you got to believe in yourself. You have to realize that as a parent, you're already qualified and competent to take care of your children and have vested interest in guiding and helping them succeed. Because the reality is educating your children is part of raising them. Homeschooling is a work of love. And as Jonathan said, it's not public school at home, but rather you are building a learning paradise that your children will not object to. There's no restrictive schedules with long hours of instruction. It is based on the realization that learning is part of living life. If children enjoy the process of learning, then they will independently educate themselves. Learning is spontaneous and it happens 24/7 every day, all year long. And this is one thing you have to remember. Don't become what everyone calls their worst nightmare, a micromanager. Learn together how everyone learns best and what gets them motivated. Instead of forcing an education, instill the love of learning. And the last thing is don't lose heart. There is a learning curve. When you start it, it can be challenging, but if you continue on, realize that it will get easier and better. You will get more confident. You're not alone, as there are so many homeschooling communities ready to give you a hand, like all of us here today.
But many parents are afraid about how to accomplish homeschooling as it applies to them. And we have written extensively on this subject in both our book and on our X account. There are plenty of concerns on homeschooling. Number one is, how can I afford it? We need two incomes. The average price range of homeschooling is between $800 to $1,200 per year per child, or about $4 a day. Public schools spend 8 to 14 times as much. So homeschooling is affordable. As for income, homeschooling provides a fundamental shift in a family's economy, one where entrepreneurship blooms and families can escape the employee mindset. Number two, am I capable of it? When I was growing up, it was common that the football coach taught either science, history, or even algebra. He had no specific training in science or history. Likewise, the public school naysayers who claim that homeschooling parents can't possibly teach their children basic algebra, they seem to forget that these same supposed parents went through the public school system themselves and passed algebra. There's a persistent mental malware that makes parents think that children cannot learn a skill or topic unless there's a professionally trained educator forcing the information down their throat. First, you need to assume that your child has a brain, and they can learn just fine on their own. Second, you can relearn the subject along with them. Children love to have camaraderie in the learning process.
So a lot of the fear that parents have is, what will my children's future be like without that institutional approval K through 12? So there's many paths. It's not just a path to higher learning like college. You also have entrepreneurship. That's a very popular one for us homeschoolers, school of the trades. And, you know, if a kid wants to have a regular job, they can do that too. And new opportunities that we never thought were possible during our time in school was becoming a social media influencer, among other things, right? So many ways to make a living. So lots of opportunities they have available. And when you're homeschooling, you have the chance to explore and discover. Because you're spending more time with your children, quality time, and getting to know them, you will build stronger relationships with them. And if your children are bonded to you and like you as a person, then they will have no qualms about learning from you. And another plus is children are learning to mastery, not to a grade. They move to the next levels when they fully understand and are ready to move on. So unlike the public school system. And you become an opportunist by taking advantage of your children's natural curiosity and sense of discovery. You meet their intellectual needs and in turn, and teaches them how to do it for themselves, what we call independent learning.
One of the most important goals of homeschooling is to develop and nurture the parent-child bond, and not simply the conveyance of facts and data. Learning is merely the secondary consequence of that bonding. Success in homeschooling is the foundations you build in family and legacy. We must reestablish the bonds between parents and their children. It doesn't matter how great your curriculum or homeschool plan will be, but if your relationship with your children is not great, then it's not going to work out. You need to break the bonds that they had with their peers and rebuild them. This extends to the spousal relationship as well. Your family will become closer. When strong and meaningful relationships are established with the home, it becomes an environment of peace and harmony, and that's what makes it conducive for learning.
And as you're building your family, that would lead to a positive environment for learning.
If you want to know more, our website is homeschoollife.us, and we do coaching. And our book is
Kids Don't Need School.
Kids Don't Need School.
A radical new homeschool plan to teach anything, promote independent learning, and prepare children for an uncertain future.
Fantastic. You came prepared with a copy. That's great. Thank you both so much. Jonathan and Adriana, you guys are a wealth of knowledge. I wish I knew about you before I started my homeschool journey. Two things just real quick that popped out. The mental malware. I can tell you that when we started homeschooling, I had to get out of my own way. I'm a former public school teacher. I had to unlearn everything. And then learning paradise. I love that. That is so great. That's what homeschooling can be. And there are a lot of days I'm not sure which one of us got the most out of it, my kiddo or me.
Exactly.
Because it's such a magical situation, a magical setting, because everyone is learning. You're not just tipping their head back and pouring knowledge in, which is a very different model. Please be sure to check out their book, Kids Don't Need School. It is a phenomenal book, and it covers everything from discipline and how do we get started to now what? Let's do this. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so happy to have connected with you. And I love that they're from my hometown, Kennewick, Washington. So
thank you very much.
We're going to have coffee when I'm over there, and I'm trying to get over there.
Absolutely. Yes. We would enjoy that.
So that would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Take care.
Take care. So up next, we have two very special guests, Lindsey Mann and Lindsey Whitney from the Homeschool Supply Co. just across the water from me. I'm over in Kitsap County. Ladies, we are so excited that you're here tonight. I know we hear a lot, just like I'm sure you have. Lindsey Mann, when I had coffee with you, you mentioned, people come in and they're like, how do I do this? Where do I start? So ladies, please share your knowledge with us tonight. And we're very excited that you're here to be cheerleaders and help parents feel empowered to educate their kiddos. Take it away, ladies.
We're so excited to be here. We're thrilled. Thanks for having us. Our favorite thing is to talk to curriculum and to talk to parents and to encourage them that homeschooling is a viable option for their family. And there's such a wide variety of resources out there that no matter your style, no matter your family flow, no matter your values, homeschooling can fit and be wonderful for your family. So yes, we're the Curriculum Girls, Lindsey and Lindsey. We own the Homeschool Supply Co. We're located in Bothell, Washington, a suburb of Seattle. And yes, we opened a bookstore when everyone else is closing bookstores. Call us crazy, but we do believe that getting curriculum into the hands of parents where they can touch it, flip through it, see it, and make educated choices about what they want to bring into their home is the best way to go about building your homeschool. We are also homeschooling moms. We have kids ranging from age 3 to 10, and we're doing this right along with you. I was homeschooled myself all the way through my
She still likes her
school.
mom.
I do. I still love my mom. And I'm so thankful for the education and the values that she gave to me. And I'm loving doing the same thing with my boys. My sisters are still homeschooling, are all homeschooling. And it's been a really valuable part of our life and our family, shaping our values, shaping our identities and the way that we interact with the world. So we do believe that getting curriculum into the hands of parents is the best way for them to feel supported and ready to take on this homeschooling journey. We have curated a selection of acclaimed, vetted, beautiful, thought-provoking curriculum because we want to get kids thinking critically, being creative, and exploring their passions. There's a plethora of homeschool curriculums out there, and there's so many that are just wonderful and beautiful. So we love gathering those resources and being able to present them to parents so that they can compare and contrast, so that they can look through the different styles and bring the perfect thing into their home.
So the problem with public school is that it is one size fits all curriculum. You have no say in what they're teaching your kids. And if your kid does not learn in that learning style, they just miss out. Your child should be thriving, not just surviving in a classroom. The beauty of homeschool is you get to customize your child's education. When you decide to pull your kids, and they might be in 3rd grade, when you pull them, they might not be at 3rd grade level. They might be at 2nd grade level. They might be at 4th grade level. So when you pull them, really take your time, get to know your kids. It's okay if they're below grade level. It's okay if they're a little bit above grade level. The public school system is going to shove them through regardless of where they're at. So slow down, take your time. It's okay. It's okay to take a break. If you pull them mid-year, don't do anything for a couple weeks. Take the time with the family, reconnect, pick one. We tell moms all the time that come in the store, if they just pulled, pick one subject, pick math. If you want to do math, do that for 6 weeks, then come back and let's add a language arts program. Then come back and we'll add something else. And if it takes 6-7 months to piece together your year, that's great. Make cookies, read books, and go to the park in the middle of all of that, because that's all that they need. You can do it.
Yes. So we do love curriculum, but like you just heard Lindsey say, curriculum is not the end all be all. It's not the driver of your homeschool, and it's not even necessary to homeschool. I will be the first one to tell you that. However, we do believe it's a beautiful tool, and that's why we have our store. So we have a lot of beautiful, acclaimed, rigorous, thought-provoking curriculums out there. Public school curriculum is the lowest bar. You just heard the Prescotts talk about this. It's a system that's made for the lowest common denominator to be able to walk in there and thrive. So don't worry about finding a curriculum that's like the public school or as good as the public school, because honestly, most homeschool curriculums are better than that, and they set a higher bar and they really achieve mastery and education. So I'm going to throw some curriculum styles out there to you. I don't want you to be overwhelmed, because actually I want you to be excited. And as I talk about these styles, I'm hoping that one of them will strike a chord with you, and you'll realize there's not just one right way to homeschool. There's not one perfect curriculum that I can pick, and if I don't have it, everything's going to go wrong. There's so many options that you can find to fit your family. So I'm going to throw these styles out at you, and I'm hoping that it encourages you that homeschooling is a right fit for you. So when you go to choose a curriculum, I think it's important to consider your time. You're the educator, you're the teacher. Do you have a lot of time to sit down and prep your lessons and then meet with your student and teach? Or are you on a time crunch? Are you a part-time working parent? Then you might need a curriculum that's more open and go. So make sure that you find a curriculum that fits your time, the commitment that you have, what am I trying to say? The time frame that you have to commit to homeschooling. Also, make sure that you're choosing something that fits your family's lifestyle. If you don't like screens and if you're not very techie, then probably an online math curriculum is not the best thing for you. But if you have a kiddo who loves his screens, who learns really well in that way, then maybe you can pop in some math or some writing in those areas. So think about what you want your family to look like and what your family values are, because the curriculum that you pick can work for your family values and not against it. If you don't have a printer and you're not very techy, then please don't pick a PDF where you have to print 175 pages and find a thing from the appendix and make sure you turn to page. It's not going to work for you. So set yourself up for success. If you know you need something that's open and go, then you've narrowed down the curriculum options for you, and that's the perfect thing to do. Now for some options. I hope one of these strikes a chord with you. We've got boxed curriculums. These are companies who sell third grade. So you'll have third grade language arts, third grade math, third grade history, third grade science, and yes, a textbook for every single one of those. This is very much like recreating school at home. And we try to encourage parents that you don't need to do that. However, if that's something that you feel will work for your family, those companies and those products do exist and they're out there. There's also a ton of subject-specific curriculum. For example, a company who produces writing curriculum. They're really good at writing. They stay in their lane. They're the best of the best, so they don't add on a math program. They just stick with their writing. So you can piece together some really beautiful curriculums from lots of different publishers that each have their own specific focus. The other thing is you can find a lot of literature-based curriculums where you're reading beautiful, classic, even more modern books and using those as launching points to further education for your kids. So you might be reading a book about a certain period in history, and that might bring up a lot of social discussions, a lot of hard questions, a lot of would you have done this, some logic, some culture, some history. You can cover a lot of things just by looking at a really beautiful book of literature. There's also a lot of online and interactive curriculums out there. You can find a site that provides to you a math program for your kid where it will do all of the lectures, all of the quizzes, all of the record keeping. And I'm looking at you people who have high schoolers that you're thinking of pulling, because I don't know about you, but I'm not ready to teach algebra. I'm not ready to teach geometry. And so finding a supportive tool like that online can really be a way to support your child and support your homeschool. There's also classical education programs. Some people are interested in a really rigorous classical education for their kids, covering Latin and rhetoric and logic. There's lots of curriculums out there for homeschoolers that support those needs too. Another great way to bring some fun into your homeschool is by unit studies. Unit studies are maybe a study that's about weather. And you rope in lots of different subjects while you're studying something like weather. For example, you could pull in some history. The child will do some writing, maybe even some math, and you cover a lot of different subjects in one unit, talking about something like weather. We love those in our home. A lot of people do something like a game schooling, which sounds super fun. And is it legit? It totally is. There's some really fun games out there that are super educational. Just think of things like Some Swamp. It's one of the games that we play with our kids, a math game. Even Ticket to Ride talks about geography, different countries, different places you can visit. A lot of folks use that as a jumping off point to see what their kids are interested in and to pursue those ideas through games and hands-on activities. You can also do things like museums and reading biographies and use all of those places as a jumping off point to further your kids' education.
Family values. I have 2 kids. My kids are 8 and 9. We like to do stuff as a family. So we chose a history program that is literature based. So we do it at night as a family. Then my husband's involved. He gets to be part of the discussion and the learning. And we forget that history is just old stories. All of a sudden, we just started memorizing all these random facts for a test. And I want my kids to have the entire broad story. So it's just a great time to do it together as a family. And if you have a kindergartner and a 4th grader, do it together. Mm-hmm. There's no reason to get a full kindergarten history program and a full 4th grade program. Do it together as a family. Multi-age learning is the best. Mm-hmm. Start simple and start small. Yeah. You can do it.
Yeah. We have a lot of curriculums in our store that do fit a wide range of kids. So if you have multiple kids, don't feel like you have to be sitting down with each one of them individually. Family learning is so important, and it's such an important way to instill your values in your kids. And so find a curriculum. We have lots of them in our store that are for elementary ages or high school ages. If you want to shop online with us at the Homeschool Supply Co., you can see our carefully curated list of curriculum. We have religious curriculums, we have secular curriculums, we have all-encompassing curriculums, and we have some that are just, subject style. And if you ever call or email the store, one of us will answer, and we will love to chat with you about the specific scenario you're going through, some questions that you have. If you have any hangups, you have us, and we would love to be on your side, because we do truly believe that home education is the best for every family, no matter who you are and no matter what you've got going on in your life. And we would love to help you. And I know all of these folks here would love to encourage you and help you that homeschooling can fit your family and your needs. Thanks for having us on.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'm over here. My kids are grown and flown, and I'm like, can I homeschool? Who can I homeschool?
You need a math curriculum, right?
This is fantastic. I actually get to feed my soul helping my friend with her homeschooling.
Yay.
Because someone needs to tell her what she's doing she can't do. She works full-time, single mom, and she's homeschooling.
Yeah,
she does it all.
And
I love it, girl. It's fantastic. I love something you said, that curriculum can fit your family values. That is so important, because that is not in public education anymore. It's the values of the system, of the state, of the government, and not the family values. In fact, they discourage that, and openly. Especially, in very deep blue states, we see that. And because we have people watching from all over the country, it's really important that they know that. And you don't have to just live in Washington to reach out to the two of you to talk about curriculum.
I'll answer the phone.
Absolutely. And your website is phenomenal. If you are local in the area, or you can take a field trip over to their store, Homeschool Supply Co. also has classes that you can sign up for. I have totally been looking and snooping all over your website. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Ladies, you bring so much wonderful enthusiasm and encouragement. I hope that parents all over the country are realizing that a lot of times it's the adults that need to get out of our own way to make this happen. It really can happen. And we're so excited. I hope this is the beginning of several live events. I was sitting over here thinking of all these little ideas as you two were talking. So if you will stick around, I think we're going to have some time for some questions toward the end. If there's any questions in the live chat, we can bring those on board.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you, ladies, so much. I really appreciate it. So our next guest, we have actually had a live with Kevin Bordin from HSLDA before. Sadly, Robert Bortins wasn't able to join us this evening, but Kevin's going to play two parts tonight. He's going to talk about the HSLDA and some of the legal things that we need to consider as parents. And he happens to have children who have gone through classical conversations and graduated through that program, as I understand. Is that correct, Kevin?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, because you have a ton of amazing things to tell and share with people, I'm handing the floor off to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Greetings, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I don't know where you are in the country, but hopefully you're at home or with those that you love. As Joy mentioned, my name is Kevin Bordin. I'm a staff attorney with the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And I will get to that portion second, but I'll do a stand-in here for my friend Robert Bortins, who currently runs Classical Conversations program. I'll give a little bit about Classical Conversations as well as just classical education, with the caveat, of course, that if I say something incorrect about Classical Conversations, then that is solely attributable to me and not to Cece or to Robert. And certainly I'm not a classical education expert. We've just used it with our kids. So I'll share with you mainly kind of our experience with it and what that has looked like in our family. Just so you know who I am and my kind of insertion into the homeschool community, I do, my wife, Wendy, we do have 8 children. Our oldest is 23. Our youngest is 5. Our 2 oldest have, our oldest has graduated from Classical Conversations and Hillsdale College. And our next oldest, our 18-year-old son, will graduate from Classical Conversations later this week on Saturday. So, the title that Robert had here was "Why Classical Education is the Antidote to a Failing System." And one of the reasons I think it's an antidote is because it's almost antithetical to this kind of indoctrination, sit in a classroom, be lectured at, very minimal dialogue, very minimal interaction with the students. And so I think one of the reasons that we enjoyed classical conversations and classical education in general is because as kids grow up and get in that older phase, stages in their education, they're invited to interact with texts. They're invited to ask questions. They're invited to explore ideas and to have dialogues with their tutors. And so basically, if you're looking at classical education, as I understand it, again, there are many, many experts. My wife would be much better here in my stead. But you have the grammar phase, you have the logic phase, and you have the rhetoric phase. And so you have the early stages. And think of this, if you go into a new field or you go into a car mechanic and they start using a bunch of verbiage and a bunch of language that you don't understand, words that you don't know what they mean, that's because you just don't know the grammar of how mechanics speak to one another. And so anytime you learn anything new, the first thing you learn is the grammar. And so, for example, when I went into the military, and if you've heard the phrase acronym soup, the military uses a ton of acronyms, and part of the job that you have when you first show up is just, what's the grammar? When someone says PCS, what does that mean? When they say TDY, what does that mean? When they say BAH, what does that mean? That's all of the grammar that you're learning. And so the first stage of classical education is simply learning what is the grammar. They do that through a lot of memorization, which I think is great. My kids are way smarter than I am, primarily because of this classical education model where they have learned and grown and memorized information that's important. And then they have that information to draw on as they get older. And so if you don't have the grammar, you can't move on to the next phase of whatever that topic is, just like a car mechanic. If you don't have any idea of the parts of a car or what your mechanic is talking about, you can never have a substantive discussion about the vehicle, because you'll never be able to get past, what does that mean? What is that? What does that do? I don't know what that is. So that's the first phase. Then you move into this logic phase, which is what I would characterize as probably a frustrating phase for most parents, because it's the phrase your kids get to when they start asking, why are we doing that? Why do we have to go there? Why do you act like this? Why are you making me do this? It's all of these kind of questions that are almost kind of provocative in nature. That's because they're naturally getting to this developmental age where they're just curious, and not just, okay, this happened on XYZ date, but why did that happen? Right? Not just, for example, someone who's studying history, not just that the American Revolution occurred, but why did they do that? Why did they find the need to push back against what they thought was tyranny against their country? Why were they so concerned about taxes? And was that a just action to tax the tea that's coming in? And was it a just action for folks to sneak in there and throw the tea overboard? Those are the types of questions that we're looking at in the logic phase. And so as a parent, if you notice yourself, why is this kid always questioning everything that I'm saying? Why are they always pushing back against what things that are coming out of my mouth? It's because they're naturally entering the logic phase. And so part of the classical educational model seeks to embrace that phase and use it in a way that's productive in terms of learning and education. And then the final phase is rhetoric. And that's basically kind of the elocution phase, where you learn to present, you learn to not just formulate your ideas like you do in the logic phase, but how can I meaningfully communicate that to someone who maybe is interested or not interested. And so those are the phases. Of course, it can get a lot more depth in there. And Lindsey did a great job of talking through some of the options there from a classical education model. I'll tell you what this looks like from a classical conversations perspective and how they move through this process. And Lee Bortins has a number of good books. One is called The Core, I believe it is. The other is called The Question. I think she has another one that has a similar type title. So in these younger years, it's a 3-cycle program, and they memorize lots of facts, lots of data, math facts, history facts. They memorize Latin, and they go through this process. And as they continue to memorize this on this 3-year cycle, so it's iterative in the sense of they come back to it again, which is good for the learning development. And then when they get to this logic phase, for example, my son just went through Challenge A. He went through a book called The Fallacy Detective, where he learned all of the logical fallacies. In Challenge B, they start to put this together, and they do a very comprehensive mock trial program. My daughter did it last year and absolutely loved it, where they break up into teams, and they get to be the prosecution and the defense, and they get to play the parts of witnesses, and they look at what does it look like to put on this trial, to ask leading questions, to deal with objections, to try to respond with logic and not commit the fallacies from the fallacy detective on the fly as they deal with this in the mock trial setting. And then as they get to the high school years, they get to this rhetoric phase, and it culminates in, which my son just did a couple of months ago, in a senior thesis, where they spend all year doing this comprehensive research project, a thesis that they developed, and then they get up in front of a panel of judges. In this case, these young people got up in front of a panel of 5 judges, and they deliver an abstract of their senior thesis. The judges had it in advance to read. It's at least 12 pages. Some of them were right at 12. Some of them were a little longer. And then the judges ask questions of them. And so basically, it's kind of like, I'm a lawyer by training. Going before a panel of judges, you present your case, and then they proceed to ask you questions and push a little bit the premises that you make in your paper, the thesis that you're trying to support, and affirm the good that you have there. And then also push back and ask some additional questions to continue to get the student to provoke some responses in them, and maybe to get them to think about an angle that they may not have considered as they were preparing for their presentation. So that's kind of the classical education model. And again, one of the things I love about it in our family is because it just creates a natural environment where it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to have discussions. It's okay to have a different opinion on something. When I get a question on something that maybe I don't know about, that's okay with me, because my kids are learning and processing and growing and thinking through those things. And I can just turn the questions back at them and ask, well, hey, that's a great question. What do you think about it? How would you respond to that? If I asked this of you, what would you say? Or have you heard your friends talk about this? And so anyways, those are some of the ways that we've looked at it, because in the home environment, it's not this top-down, mom and dad know everything. It's a learning journey that we're all on. And as they read things that I haven't read or read for a long time, I can say, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Can you tell me more about it? And then it can be a great way for us to have the dialogue. Let me answer Natalie asks a question here. How has the community aspect of CC been for your family? Have you always been a part of the same co-op group? Have your adult children maintain those relationships? So a little bit of our family background. I was active duty Air Force for 10 years. And so we moved 5 times in those 10 years, a couple of international moves, all different states. So CC, we found CC to be great because it was a singular model that we could use and plug into a community wherever we were. So we didn't have any well, do we want to live in this zip code because they have better public schools, or even a different co-op? And we've done different co-ops, and there's no one size fits all approach to homeschooling. So I'll put that out there and just be very transparent. But what we found with CC moving around a lot is it allowed us to plug into a community quickly and not lose any aspect of where we were, because we knew the cycles, we knew the stages, we knew what the guide said. And so the community aspect was really, really quite exceptional for our family personally. And one of the reasons is just because of the moving that we had. I don't know exactly what you mean by have your adult children maintain those relationships. What I would say is our family is very close. Our daughter comes back, and she doesn't come home and stay home. She does have a job, and frankly, just moved out west last month. And it was very sad because we all love her and we hate to see her go. But those relationships are very strong. And so, anyways, that's how CC has served us. But again, you just have to know what you're after and talk to people that are smarter than me, like the Prescotts and like Lindsey and Lindsey from Homeschool Supply Company. Fun fact, which maybe no one knows except the Lindseys and I, is that we met each other for the first time just a couple of weeks ago when I was at we were both at a Washington homeschool conference. So I got a chance to meet them, which was wonderful, and recount. I grew up in Western Washington. And so we actually lived very close to where they are in Bothell. So it was very neat to just chat with them about some of the hot spots there in Western Washington and in Bothell. So if you have additional questions about classical education, please go ahead and put those in the chat. Well, let me just touch on this. It says real world outcomes of this method. I don't know that I think the real world outcomes of classical education is fairly self-explanatory. It's a very old model. I mean, this is not, classical conversations didn't make this up. They didn't just invent the model. They simply looked at what has worked in education for centuries and millennia, really. And it's this idea of small groups, tutorial-based, discussion-driven learning, and with increasing levels of responsibility. And so one of the things they do in Challenge 4, for example, which is the final stage, the senior year, if you will, is the students are responsible to lead, I think, at least 3 strands. So every week, the students in that class, instead of just, my wife was the Challenge 4 director, actually. So instead of my wife leading that strand, she still prepared and knew what was going on, but the students were responsible to come prepared to lead the discussion on the literature that they're reading. And they do read the Iliad, the Odyssey, Homer, those types of things in Challenge 4. They translate the Vulgate, and they translate, I think, the Apostles' Creed, perhaps. So that's one of the things they do, is it just preps people for natural growth into adulthood, instead of this sit in a chair, let me dump on you and tell you everything that I know because you don't know anything. After all, you don't have a high school diploma yet. No. It says, actually, you're 10, you're in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. You have a brain, you're smart, you have something to offer, and we want to hear what you have to offer. And so that's one of the things I very much appreciate about the classical model is it just tracks very well with the natural progression of human development. And it makes a lot of sense to us. So hopefully that's been helpful. Let me switch gears. That's taking off my classical conversations hat. If you got additional information, I don't know their website, but just Google classical conversations. I'm sure it'll come up. HSLDA works very closely with classical conversations. They're great partners of ours. They often sponsor our national convention. And so I'd invite you to check them out and see if there's a community near you. And if there's not a community, you can start one. My wife started 2 when we lived in Colorado. Colorado Springs, one a little bit farther away, and then she started another one the next year a little bit closer to us. So if there's not one near you and it sounds like a good model that you'd like to use, consider starting one. And I know I used to work with the international director there, and I know they have communities all over the world that serve students in other countries as well. Okay, let me put on my HSLDA hat. So I am a lawyer by profession. As I mentioned, I was in the military for 10 years active duty and then 4 years National Guard. And so all of my legal training prior to coming to HSLDA was in the military. So unlike Lindsey, who mentioned she was homeschooled, I was not homeschooled. I went to private school and public school, a combination thereof. In fact, I didn't know any homeschoolers until I started homeschooling, really personally. So it was a very, very different model for us. We had an unlikely homeschool journey. We got in by God's providence, not by some magical, theological discussion that my wife and I had before we were married. It was frankly not on our radar before we got married, but God brought us to this point. And so we're very glad that he did. So know your rights, legal steps to withdraw from public school. There's no magic process to withdraw from public school. What we do recommend is that it be clear that you have done so. And so often if you're a member, you can reach out to us and of course ask us questions. Hey, what do you recommend? But in generally, we just want to make it clear to the school that you are no longer there, that you're no longer sending your child there. They're no longer enrolled. And one of the reasons we do this is obviously, as many of you know, if you don't send your child to public school, eventually you'll start getting truancy notifications, sometimes really annoying daily texts that come in every day. We missed your child today. And then there's a process that is often triggered in most states for a children who is no longer comes to school, is considered truant, and then maybe considered chronically absent or something of that nature. So the process that we ask folks to really follow is simply make it clear. And the way to do that is potentially with an email that is acknowledged and received. Potentially it's through a letter with certified read receipt, so that you can say, if they ever question it, you can say, no, here's the receipt. Of course, if you send the letter and get the certified thing and you're notified that it's delivered, hang on to that, because if you don't have it, then there's a good chance when push comes to shove, you won't be able to document that you actually sent this. So the method that you use really is less significant than the fact that you have documentation that you have done so, and to make it clear when you're withdrawing. So if you send an email on tomorrow, for example, I'll just throw that on Wednesday, I'm withdrawing my child from your school. Okay, great. But you could also say, I'm withdrawing Emma, Michael, and Scott from your school effective immediately, Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. That's just a little bit more detail, just as an example that may be helpful for clarity to say, well, what specific day did you withdraw your child? And of course, you know, if you look into the law at all, you realize that law is made in the gray areas. When it's black and white, typically there's not a lot of question. And so we often have to get involved in those cases where it's not clear. Okay, well, if I start the day here, there's only 9 days of truancy. If I start the day when the school says to start, then there's 11 days of truancy. And now we've triggered some process because there's a 10-day window. So just keep that in mind in terms of your processing. The other thing you need to know is, what is the law in your state? And again, I don't know where you are. You can go to hslda.org. It's up on the site there. We have state overviews for every state and show you exactly what's required in the state that you live in. And they're very different. And it does surprise some people if you're a new homeschooler. It does not necessarily track by whether you think you're in a conservative or a non-conservative or liberal state. So don't think, oh, just because I'm in a liberal state, right, however you're going to define that, that somehow the homeschool law is horrible. Or just because I'm in a really conservative state, the whole legislature is red, the governor's red, all these things we hear, that it's going to be one of the best states in the country to homeschool in. Those are not necessarily correlative. And so some of the things to think through, if you are currently homeschooling and you may move, or you're not in a homeschooling environment and you're considering starting to homeschool, some states have subject matter requirements, and you've got to teach certain subjects. And of course, you have to teach those whether you like it or not. It's just because you don't like the law doesn't mean we're at liberty just to ignore it. Some states have day requirements, or some states have hour requirements. So you might have, for example, in high school, 1,080 hours that are required in your homeschool journey. Some states may have 172 or 180 days that you have to use. Some states may have, you have to do an average of 4 hours a day, however you define that in whatever your kind of educational setting is. So know what the laws of your state are, which is why we make all of this information public on our site. So it's not behind, we do have things behind a member paywall, but things just like the basic laws of your state are not behind a paywall, because we just want everybody to know what those are so they can comply. Some of the things that you do have access to if you join us as a member. So HSLDA we're primarily a member-driven organization. You can join us as a member. And one of the things that you then have access to is you can email our legal team at any time with any question you might have. I'm thinking about moving to California. What's it like to homeschool there? Or I'm going to go to Texas. Or do you think this qualifies as a social studies curriculum in the state? I need to know whether it qualifies. Or how can I count 4 hours? Or the calls we get a lot is, I withdrew my child from public school and the public school is still counting them absent. And I don't want them to count them absent anymore. So will you write them a letter? We write a lot of letters on behalf of families. Other things we have behind paywalls are you can download a withdrawal form from our site. You can download, some states have a notice of intent. You can download a notice from our site and submit that. And this is another thing I'll just highlight. Some states have requirements that use a specific form that's prepared by the Department of Education. In some states, you just have to provide the requisite information. There's no specific form required. So the main takeaway from a legal perspective that I'll just foot stomp again and again is you have to know what the laws of your state are, and you do have to follow them. And so are there assessment requirements? Washington's got, I won't cover Washington law because I don't know if most of you are there or not there, but is there an assessment requirement? And if my child has to take an assessment, do I have to keep it? And do I have to keep it, and keep it for how long? And do I have to turn it into anybody? And if I have to turn it in, then how do I have to is there a deadline to turn it in by? So those are the types of questions that you might answer. Let me just add a note on record keeping, because I get this quite a bit. What record should I keep? I look at it from a legal perspective. My wife looks at it from a slightly different perspective. And so what I think is necessary to keep are what I would describe as legally significant documents. So if you move, for example, to West Virginia, where I currently live, you have to file a notice, a one-time notice. Keep that notice. I still have the notice. When I submitted that, I called the school and I said, are you the person to submit this notice to? And she said, yes. And I said, okay, I'm going to send you an email with this notice. And my request is that you respond with a receipt that you have received my notice for these particular children. So I still have that email. I printed it out and I saved it digitally and I printed it out and keep it in our file. What you don't need to keep is every persuasive, essay that your 8th grader has ever written in their life. You don't need boxes and boxes of everything that they've written, but it is a helpful thing to keep a sampling of the work that they've done up to a certain point, so that if anybody ever questions something, somebody makes an outlandish allegation that your kid can't read, or they don't know how to write, or they can't construct sentences, and somebody questions it, you would have it available if you needed it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to advise you to provide it to the state, but I think it's helpful to have available. That doesn't mean I keep every math assignment the kid's ever done, but I might keep some. And so those are the types of things that we would encourage families to keep up with. So anyways, those are some of the things from a legal perspective. From an HSLDA perspective, we've been around for 40 years. We were there when it was considered illegal in almost every state, perhaps every state. And we've been there to try to continue to reduce regulation and oversight of parents. And so let me just close with echo some of the comments that the Prescott and Lindsey have made, which is do what's right for your family. You have to comply with the law. There's lots of ways to comply with the law. We of course encourage folks to do that. But it really, every family, every mom and dad starts off as homeschoolers. And at some point, we have this mindset that we have to stop homeschooling and send them to some institution for somebody else to do it. And our position is very simply, you have taught them many, many things from the day they were born until the day of whatever the compulsory age is in your state. And we think that almost every parent, perhaps every parent, if they had the confidence and the resources to do it, could just continue that homeschooling journey and not stop it at some artificial timeline. And so if you're on this journey, let me just encourage you to do it. Homeschooling is not the easy choice. I think it's a great choice. I think it's the right choice, but there are many days where it's not the easy choice. So if you're on the homeschool journey now, let me just remind you and encourage you to keep going forward. When you hit these milestones like we're about to hit on Saturday, when our second child graduates and moves on to another chapter in life, you look at your wife and you go, okay, we did it. We've got 6 more. We'll keep going. But we did it. And if you're not a homeschool mom or dad yet, but you're thinking about it, I just encourage you to ask yourself, why don't we do this? Why could we teach them so much up to a certain point, and yet somehow we're suddenly unqualified to do what parents do best, which is love their kid, teach their kids, nurture them. It requires no advanced degrees. I'm far more educated than my wife, and she is a far better educator at home. And so if you're a new homeschooler or considering it, I would just encourage you, talk to a family that you know, reach out to us at HSLDA, reach out to the Lindsey or the Prescotts or anyone within Conservative Ladies of America, and just continue to go down that journey. So my thanks to Joy and Julie for having me on. Thanks for letting me be long-winded with CC and HSLDA, but hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You are a fount of knowledge, my friend. I always learn stuff. I'm over here scribbling and taking notes so that I can pass on your pearls of knowledge as well. And I just want to say that I encourage everyone to become a member, not because I get anything from it. I see the value in HSLDA. As a former military spouse, being able to have that resource, international resources, it's a huge thing. And I know someone who literally on my couch on Monday, a grandma who's adopted her 2 granddaughters, has a legal question. She sent you guys an email. They respond and it's timely. with either we need more information or let's get in touch with each other. So please use this resource. Kevin, thank you. And I hope that you'll stick around a little bit in case there's a couple of questions.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I just want to let everyone know, if you do have questions about how to jumpstart this empowered movement of homeschooling your children, please put your questions in our live chats. And we're going to have some time after our final presenter speaks to us to answer some of those questions. We're going to bring everybody in and have a Q&A time. So now I would like to introduce one of our team members, Leslie Williams, who is on our leadership team with CLA. And Leslie, I'm going to let you have this time, but I want to let everyone know Leslie's the real deal. She is on the front lines with us on our leadership team, helping to educate people and empower people about legislation. And she has a true passion as a mom and as a spouse for educating her children. So Leslie, I would love it if you would take it away and share what you do as a homeschool mom, that it can be done. And you can homestead at the same time and have baby kittens and goats and all this other stuff.
Don't forget the pigs. That's our biggest income. So hi, everybody. I'm Leslie. I'll start out since she brought it up. We are homesteaders and we spend a lot of time on the farm. But we also had a business on the side of that, homeschooled. And there were a lot of things that we did, and we still was able to homeschool, and we still are currently homeschooling. We'll start from there. Now, I want to remind you or let you know, if you don't know, a lot of our founding fathers were homeschooled. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin. So homeschooling can produce some very important children and will produce very important children. Understand that it's the home-centered love of teaching your child that helps them learn. I always say that no one can teach a child better than the love of a parent. And I know there's a lot of things that go on, and we'll get right into that, things that you tell yourself why you can't do it. But you can do it. I did it. I am doing it. So let's get started. I want to pull up the, thank you. So these were a lot of excuses that I told myself. My son was had some problems with school. He was going to public school. He always had a hard time turning in his homework, but he was always an A and B student. But during school, they gave him access to the computers, and he had full access. He was watching porn at school. So the school was allowing this to happen. And then behind our back, he was given multiple electronics, laptops, phones, tablets, to try to hide that they were helping him transition. And he would hide those from us. Teachers wouldn't talk to me when I would go into the school and say, he's having a hard time. He's not turning in his homework. I want to be here to help you. They wouldn't talk to me. They turned me away. We tried to opt out of sex ed. We filled out all the forms, but they gave it to him anyway. So those were the first things that we had to deal with. And one of the reasons why we chose to homeschool the next oldest child, my daughter. My daughter was not understanding her schoolwork from the public school, and they were teaching off of YouTube. And she would go tell the teacher, I watched the video from YouTube, but I don't understand it. And the teacher would say, well, then go watch it again. She wasn't getting the help from the teachers. And then even though my children were A and B students in public school, the final straw was when I was having her do a division problem just to cut a recipe. She was trying to make brownies or something. she couldn't figure out how to do the basic division. And I said, that's it. You're homeschooling. So that was my multiple reasons as why I chose to homeschool. Next slide. I was scared when we made this decision. I didn't know if I knew what I needed to know to teach. I didn't know if I had the time, because we did have our business. We had our homestead. I was a stay-at-home mom taking care of kids. I didn't know if I had the time. Also, am I patient enough? That was something that came up. Am I going to get impatient or angry, or, what if I taught them wrong because I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a teacher. What if I teach them wrong? And what if I wasn't smart enough when I went to school to remember what I needed to know? And then what I do teach them, if it's wrong, is it going to put them behind? Are they going to be able to go on to higher education if they want to, or go into their career? So those were the things that I was going through, and that could be the same thing that you guys are thinking of. Next slide. But what I found out once we started the homeschooling, the things that we learned when we were applying and the trials that we went through, once we got in the actual groove of things, our homeschool was not a typical school like you would sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. It's not how we did it. We did take time to let our children decompress, not just when we took them out of school, but every once in a while, we needed to say, okay, we need to take a break. School is on our time. We decided when we wanted to do it. Didn't have to be first thing in the morning. It could be in the evening. It could be on the weekends. It was when we decided that it was the best time, and let's do some school. And we let our kids set their own pace. We don't push them to go faster and faster, or you have to go on. The children need to learn on their own, and if they learn it, then you've had a success. So there's no reason to push them ahead when they don't understand. And then living your life and learning at the same time. So with our homeschool, we also have our homestead. We live, we work on our homestead, but we also do school while we're doing that. And we're living our life, and the kids are learning at the same time. Next slide. So I have a few slides here, and I have kids right now. My youngest is 1 year old, and we've had kids all the way up through, they've now graduated high school, and we have grandkids. So we have a wide range of ages, and we have worked with all of them. So I have a few of one. This one is toddler through preschool age. And this is just kind of what we do when we do school. The kids get exercise every day. And they like Danny Go, which is on YouTube, or Happy Kids. I have life skills here. It goes along with our farm. They're learning how to take care of things. They are learning responsibility, anything that would go wrong with a farm and taking care of animals. I have a picture here of a roadway. When we are on the go, we decide to go on a drive or something. It's a great time for me to teach my little ones. Find me a word that starts with A, or what is something that's green? Find me a square. So we're always taking we're always turning everything we do into some sort of schooling activity. Same thing as if they're watching TV or playing electronics. We always try to bring something in and make it so they understand that they can learn while they're doing what they're doing. Playing outside is a great way for your children to learn. They use their senses, they explore, and they're curious. They can be creative, imagination and pretending, problem solving, cause and effect and memory skills, all of these happen when your kids are just playing. We use ABC Mouse. I know that costs a yearly subscription, but we do have that. But we also use Lucas and Friends. Lucas and Friends is free. And so whenever they decide to use the tablet, they can get on Lucas and Friends, and that's a way for them to learn. Next slide. This one is for what you would consider elementary school age. A lot of the things that we do the same, but it's a little bit more advanced because of their age. When I take the kids outside, they can look around the picture of the butterfly, the kid with the butterfly here. They look around and they decide, well, what do I see? What do I want to learn about today? Maybe with this butterfly, somebody asks something about a butterfly, and we can go and we can research it and we can look into it. We let them decide. We do daily devotionals, and where my son can read a scripture and learn about it and apply it. Again, we do ABC Mouse. He likes to do Bobo PE for his exercising. Lucas and Friends, he plays piano. I'm a piano teacher, so we're doing piano lessons. He's into a lot of reading box sets. So I have all of them right here that he's using right now. And then when he reads something, we have him write some sentences telling us about what he read. And when he's done with the book, he is doing book reports. And he's only 7. So these are things that we do. We teach a lot of history in our home. So we'd use Little Patriots, and that's free. So next slide. There we go. Okay, and then right now we don't have anybody in junior high or high school anymore, but this is what my last one that just graduated, this is kind of the things that we went through with her. Her education was based off of what she wanted to do. And she decided that she wanted to go into young childhood development. So we based her whole curriculum off of that and teaching her so she would have those skills to go on. She is now a school teacher. So it worked for her. She started a business called Anastasia's, which helps her to understand leadership skills, management, financial literacy, problem solving, communications with her customers, negotiations, time management, marketing, customer service, and networking. So all of these things that she did, she made her own stuff and she ran her company. And with us being on the farm, she was taught life skills, but also biology and agricultural science. So it really helped her with that aspect also. These ages, at least from what I have run into personally, these ages, they're old enough to handle their own schedule. It's not a lot of oversight, but you're there to help and to guide. And I just let her move at her own pace. And it worked really well. She graduated early, so that helped for us. She was part of Turning Point. She was a chapter chair for Turning Point USA. We used TJ Ed for some of her curriculum. And then the pamphlet.net was our business. We did a monthly publication about U.S. history. And she wrote for us, which means, we were able to have her do research, working on her writing skills, grammar, all of that. But that was her history and civics and all of that. And then she did her daily exercising and Just Dance or whatever she wanted to do. So that was the way we did it. Next slide. This is a whole bunch of stuff, but I went through and I took a picture of everything that we used throughout the years. And most of the stuff we reuse. We have a copier. So when we needed to, we copied worksheets. And so we didn't have to buy new stuff all the time. And that was important to us, that we are able to pass on our stuff instead of having to keep spending the money. But this is everything that we used. And if anybody has any questions on that, you can get a hold of me. Go ahead, go on. But understand that you guys, you're not alone. There's a lot of places out there. There's co-ops, there's Facebook groups, you can go on play dates, Zoom. There's always somebody out there that is willing to help you out and get together. And don't forget, as parents, you need a break too. Get out with your friends, whatever, and have a cup of coffee or something. Get away also. You need to clear your head too. It's not just about the kids. It's about your health also. If the house is stressed, the kids are going to be stressed. So don't forget that. Our children are given to us by God to teach and to protect. And that's been the biggest thing, especially with me and my son and the whole problems we had with this school transitioning him. We need to protect our children, and we need to start now. There's some emails here on the screen. You can send some emails to Leslie, Joy, or Mary, or info. They're all at conservativeladiesofamerica.com. We're here to help you. We're here to help you start. We're here to guide you. So there we go.
Leslie, thank you so much. I learned something new about Leslie. I didn't know that you taught piano. That's fantastic. What a great way to use your talents. And I'm sure Lonnie has things that are specific talents for Lonnie, your husband, who, or that can be added to school. I think we are always searching for the knowledge out there, but we bring something to this table. And another thing that you mentioned, and I know Kevin, I think all of our guests have mentioned it tonight, we teach our children some of the most difficult skills that they will ever learn from birth to 2. That's when most of those beautiful little pink folds are created in our brain. And if you can teach your children some of the hardest skills that they will ever master, you can teach them at home without a doubt. And you mentioned that there is a huge network of friends and family and professionals like those we've had here as guests tonight that just want to help. That's what they're here for. I'm excited that I can't homeschool anymore. My own children, I can help other people and I can empower other people. But I am so excited that all of you joined us tonight, and I'm hoping that we might have some questions possibly from, I know that Julie's going to help us out. We've got our little team behind the scenes helping me with everything. Kevin, I have a question for you, something that I've had come up several times in working with parents and activism. You mentioned, the need to declare, make sure that you know your state's laws. I find a lot of times, at least here in Kitsap County in Washington, the school districts like to be sneaky and ask parents who intend to homeschool to do more than what is required by law. How do we get ready for that? What can we help tell parents that are worried? I always tell them, here's the law. I show them where the law is. I usually use your website or something like that. What do we do when the school districts push back? Do we give in, or do we say no and just do what's required?
Well, people answer that differently. My response and HSLDA's response, of course, is don't give anything additional than what is required by law.
Yeah.
And we don't do that because we want to be problematic or we want to be sticks in the mud, but we don't want to give any ground. And so you give ground away voluntarily, it's much harder to get it back. And so, for example, in West Virginia, we don't give grades. It's just names and ages. And so if the school asks you for a grade, You just politely say, the law doesn't require me to give you a grade. And if you run into problems, and it's not uncommon, Joy, for a superintendent, maybe not even through any fault of their own, but to not know the homeschool law. People come in and out of these jobs. Maybe they've had it before, maybe they haven't. But I've contacted many superintendents, and they just say, oh, I didn't know that. I just assumed that you had to give this information. And so we just politely say, nope, they don't have to give it. You know, they provided everything under the law. Do you have any other questions? And they say, no, we don't have any questions. And so we just tell families, but the best way that you can know what to provide is to educate yourself. And so that's the thing that I would tell folks. If you don't know what the law is, then you are just at the mercy of whatever the official thinks the law is. Oh man, somebody asked a question about ESAs. That's
I
like
was hoping you would see that.
So it is getting trickier and trickier. In fact, I saw for those that don't know, there was a recent news article about ESAs, and it had to do with a change in the school handbook and caps and stuff. So ESA is a very tricky issue. HSLDA has a position on it. I'm very familiar with Arizona. And so reach out to me, whatever state you're in. If you want to get HSLDA and you want to know to talk to the right person, just put your state. So for example, Washington at hslda.org or Arizona at hslda.org.
Oh, good to know.
You will get to the legal team that handles those particular questions. So, but there's a question here from Maddie B that's probably best directed not at me about.
Can you see that question, Lindsey and Lindsey?
Yeah, we see it.
Good, excellent.
We've been sitting here writing notes, thinking about it. So I'm so glad you asked. You know, your kiddo's just starting to get to a stage where they can take a lot more control over their education and they can be a lot more independent. And so we still would recommend some great family subjects that you guys can do together. Knotgrass has a great curriculum, especially going into high school, that's really rigorous. It covers government, it covers civics, it covers history, geography, and a lot of people jump into that curriculum. And again, it can be used for a great range of ages. I was also thinking of a curriculum by Master Books called Writing Strands. And it really just pushes kids to be ready for some of those college essays that are going to be coming their way. But also, you know, really scales well for middle school too. They have a bunch of options for wherever your kid is at. I also suggest looking into a good online math program. A lot of people are really enjoying Denison Math or Mr. D, and those seem to be really good online programs right now that people are going to. If you want a math textbook, AOPS, The Art of Problem Solving, also has some really great math textbooks out there that are really rigorous. If your kid is like into math competitions and stuff, that might be a good way to go. So those are just some things that we have in the store that we've looked at off the top of our head. I don't know if anyone else has some ideas or thoughts that they want to add to that.
Do you have any suggestions, either from the Prescotts? You have so much knowledge. But if someone came in for coaching with you two, how would you answer this question?
Well, we don't promote any one particular curriculum, because that's up to the parents. And we typically say that all turnkey curriculums are still one size fits all in ideology and philosophy. The thing is most homeschoolers will eventually start tailoring their curriculum, whatever they buy or whatever they put together, to the needs of the child. And so that is really the benefit of that. Now, of course, there's some very good, like classical conversations and Ron Paul curriculum, which is highly rated. But the thing is if they don't address the needs of the child, you're just spinning your wheels.
Yeah.
And so most homeschoolers, most veteran homeschoolers will adjust their teaching to the learning style of their child.
Yeah, but one thing, a caveat there is no curriculum will work if there's no good relationship between the parents and the children, if there's not that environment of peace, and harmony. Nothing's going to be learned because the child doesn't want to learn from you.
There's also the aspect of the what's in it for me question.
Yep, you've mentioned that before.
Yes, and the what's in it for me question is, and we tell parents, look, the kids are going to ask, well, why do we need to learn this? What is the purpose? And so the thing is if you're not able to answer them to their satisfaction, you're not ready to teach it. You have to be able to answer that question and get their buy-in so that they are interested and they go forward in learning that subject.
And it's okay to say that you don't have all the answers and that you don't know everything. There are so many resources out there. And I know I pieced my curriculum together. I used thriftbooks.com and bought teacher's manuals just for scope and sequence, right? And to remind myself. But a lot of times we kind of went with the flow. And a lot of times questions sparked this branch off of the tree. And so we followed it. And you have to be willing to do that. And it's okay to say, I don't have the answer, but I'm going to find out. So, Kevin, I have a really important question for you. We just had 1296, a law passed here in Washington that is allowing children, no age limit whatsoever, to receive a year's supply of hormone therapy. There are a lot of parents who want to pull their children and get them to safety in their home to keep that from happening. What's a good first step if parents want to pull their kids tomorrow?
Well, the first step is to I'll not say join HSLDA and download our notice of or our withdrawal form from Homeschool.
I'll tell them to do that because I think it's a great insurance.
Yeah, but it's if you don't want them learning what they're taught in public schools, and the state has a worldview. I mean, everybody says, oh, Christians want to teach a Christian worldview and Jews want to teach a Jewish worldview. And I'm like, yeah, and the state wants to teach a statist worldview. I don't fault them for that, but let's just acknowledge it and be open and honest.
Right.
What they're about. So if you don't like it, and if it's signed by the governor there and it takes effect immediately, I don't know which provisions of that particular of 1296 take effect when. There's often a lag time. This takes effect as of a particular date.
I misspoke. I have so many numbers in my head right now. Okay. That was 1971 that passed for the hormone therapy. 1296 is repealing the students' rights. It repealed the initiative 2081. Yeah. That is a big thing that parents are really worried about because Democrats stood on the Senate floor and said, we're going to pass this so we can bring it into compliance with state law. Yeah. Well, they went 10 paces back, like past that. Yeah. So is it the same kind of thing where we figure out what the law says, take that action, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, you would withdraw your child if you don't like what they're learning. I mean, we have fundamental parental rights in this country, and we have centuries now of Supreme Court precedent that said the child does not belong to the state, and parents have rights. They have a right to exercise those rights, and the state has an agenda. And if you like the agenda, that's fine. Keep your kid in public school. I don't. So exactly. We don't send our kids to school. And again, it's not a knock against a teacher. It's not a knock against any particular school. But the system that maybe at once upon a time was set up to serve children in the most charitable interpretation, the students and all of us now serve the system. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it's if you want to put your kids out, it's not hard. But it can be scary. And so just acknowledge that if you're going to take the step, expect that you're going to get some pushback, you don't know what, I mean, if I walked in there as an attorney and said, I'm going to pull my child out, maybe nobody would bat an eye because they would just assume, oh, you're educated. But if you're a mom with a high school diploma, and just be prepared. Well, what do you know? How do you think you're going to teach your kid? Or Johnny has special needs. Yeah.
Right. I know some parents who, good friend of mine from California, she has said to me before, I don't have a college degree, yet she has homeschooled all of her children, and they are light years ahead of public education in California. They run circles around them. I mean, we just had a homeschool group win the science tournament or something in Colorado Springs.
Yes.
I was so excited to see that. Talk about free advertising for a great movement.
Yeah.
And they didn't, everybody has this view that homeschool kids are nerdy or that they're behind. Remind the people that say that of the little circles and the hula hoops that they made kindergartners sit inside of when they returned back to public education after the lockdown. Right?
You know,
I always think of that. And it's so important that parents know that this is not weird, but it can be scary. But that's why we have the Homeschool Supply Co. We've got Lindsey and Lindsey. We've got the Prescotts. We've got HSLDA. And Kevin, as I recall, looking at the website, there's also help for people who have special needs kids, correct?
Yeah, there's I mean, we have some resources. I mean, we are primarily an advocacy firm, and so I would defer to folks, the other folks on the screen to say, what resources do you have? And
Right.
I mean, they are plentiful. They're all over the place. And so get connected to these service providers that keep up to date on it. I mean, to me, I answer the question, what do you recommend for an older 14-year-old? I mean, if it's a boy, I mean, I say I recommend the backyard, kick them out and lock the door for 2 hours and say, I'll throw some sandwiches out the back door for snacks, but
Give him a lawnmower. Let him make his own business. Talk about
right.
Finding a need in your community. It's so true.
Before we go, I'm actually going to put the Prescotts on the hot seat for a moment, because we discovered during our last live with you that one of the joys that has happened in your homeschooling experience is a cottage industry, a business with your daughter. Do you want to share a little bit about how learning turned into, just real quick, because I know I want to respect everybody's time.
Sure, no problem. We don't mind, hawking our wares, but our daughter, it was started as a homeschooling project, and she was baking. She loves to bake.
Yeah.
And she decided, she said, we're out of vanilla, and so we had a little conversation about that. And she said, well, why can't we make vanilla? I says, well, sure, we could do that. And so we started that, and it became our business, Extracts by Annabelle. And we make vanilla extract. We have 2 flavors. We have the bourbon vanilla, and we have the Tahitian. And so we're about to enter our 4th year at the Prosser Farmers Market, Prosser, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And we're negotiating with a local grocery store to carry that. And she's really excited, and she learned to network with people just organically.
Yes.
And so our vanilla is aged over a year. It's made with premium beans, grade A, from Papua New Guinea.
No added ingredients,
And all because someone had a question that started with learning. That's the best part.
Exactly. It turned into that entrepreneurial journey. And now she said recently, I want to go to university to get a business degree. I think that's going to help me, because when I turn 18, I want to have my bachelor's and be able to take over my company as CEO.
She wants to be a vanilla tycoon.
So, and that's just on the side, because she is also an artist. And so, and she's learning Japanese, and her artwork is related to Japanese manga, which is their type of a cartoon.
Right.
And so her other passion is to be able to go to Japan and be an author and illustrator for those kind of comics.
And she started college at 14.
Yeah, and she says her business degree is going to help her with that avenue as well. So it's all connected.
So I think that we can close with saying that homeschooling can be a lot like the book If You Give a Mouse a Cookie.
Indeed, yes.
Else, right?
Exactly.
It can be a wonderful journey that starts with something small, and everybody benefits from it. The family benefits from it. The child benefits from it. Learning actually happens. You get to raise pigs. You get to, do the cool mock trial if you're part of Classical Conversations, and you get to meet awesome people at the Homeschool Supply Co., where they can help you navigate this journey and have a jumping off point where you don't feel like it's a cliff that you're jumping off of. So I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Thank you to our CLA team. Leslie, thank you for sharing your real life experience. Kevin, thank you. To the Prescotts, thank you.
Thank you.
Lindsey, if you have any questions specifically for our guests, like Leslie shared, please send an email either to info@conservativeladiesofamerica, or Leslie at the same address, or Joy, and we will make sure to get those questions to our guests this evening. Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.